All right, let's get things started today. Hope everyone's having a good Wednesday. Thanks for joining us. So today we'll be going over product customizations within Flxpoint. This will allow you to change product data that has come in and modify that and upload new information for your products after they're built into the product catalog. It's very useful to use this in case maybe the titles or any of the data fields coming over from your sources aren't the best. So this is a way that you can use a spreadsheet, modify that data, and re-upload that into Flxpoint to then change that information and then push that out to your sales channels. So we'll dive into the dashboard now. And as always, if there's any questions or any comments or need clarification on any point, feel free to post that in the chat or the Q&A section. And then afterwards, again, if there's any general questions or points of the dashboard that you'd like help with, definitely let us know and we can dive into those at the end. So I'm in the product catalog right now and looking at a list of products here, and we can see, maybe I'm not a big fan of the titles of some of these items here, or maybe I want to update the brand fields or one of these other data points on these items. Now, if you just have a handful of them, you very easily can just go into an item here and modify the fields one by one. And then once you do that, you can click say variant and it'll update that. Or maybe we want to add a UPC to this item. And you can do that as well on a one-off basis for each item. But let's say you have a list of items, or maybe you've hired a VA to go through your listings and come up with better titles or just fill out the product data. Maybe something's missing from your source like UPCs or even ASINs. If you're listing on Amazon, you can upload ASINs to your products and match those exact ASINs. So a good way to get started with the product data is going to be grabbing an export of your product catalog or your channel listings. These customizations can be done at the product catalog level or the channel listing level. Say maybe you have specific titles that you want to use on one channel and not the other. You can definitely do it that way. But we'll start with the product catalog here. And let's just grab an export of these first 50 items here for an example. So we'll select these, we'll come up to actions and click on export. And when you're doing the export, you'll want to export all the data that you're potentially going to want to modify. And one thing to keep in mind is some data points live at the parent level, such as brands and categories, and then other data points such as UPC or the variant title all live, and even ASIN, all live at the variant level. And it's important to keep this in mind because when we go to upload these back in, if we're modifying a variant field, we'll need to include the variant SKU. And likewise, if we're modifying a parent field such as brand, we'll need the parent SKU. And what you could do is create an export template that already has all these fields added to it. So then you can easily just keep using this product customization or that same template that you've created to export that data. Just ensure that you have all those fields available to you when you try to go do this upload back into Flxpoint with the customizations. So I'm going to go ahead and export this data right now. And Flxpoint's going to export this as a CSV file. And here's our CSV file with our column headers. So let's say some of these items, I want to modify the titles. Maybe I want to make this compact. Expand out flat dark earth or FDE to flat dark earth. And anything you modify on here will specify that we want to re-upload and customize these fields on the customization template. But we'll go through here, and maybe I have the UPC for this item. I want to plug that in. And then we also have brands here. And maybe I want to have all these, modify all these brands to the same brand for whatever reason. So let's just call these Flxpoint products. So we have our spreadsheet now. So let's go ahead and save that. This has all of our changes and customizations on it. So if we go back to Flxpoint, we're going to need to create a mapping template for this customization upload. So the first thing we'll want to do is go to our settings page and then go to mapping and templates. And on these templates, we're going to look for the bulk customizations. I already have some configured, so it's already in my top section. But if you haven't created any yet, it'll be down in this not configured section. So just be sure to look on either place, depending on if you've created any templates or not yet. And then within this, it really depends if we're going to be doing this as a listing customization or a product customization. So that determines if we're modifying specific channel listings or our product catalog in whole. So since I'm doing this on the product catalog, I'm going to do a product bulk customization, and then we'll create a new template here. I'm just going to name this test customization. The good use case for this is maybe you only want to update brands certain times. Maybe you only want to update titles at a different time. So you can create multiple templates in here. And maybe I just want to do a brand customization. You can name it that way and save a specific template for modifying a specific field. That way it saves you from having to go back and create more templates later on. And just like our get source templates or any of our other templates, we need to tell Flxpoint what field to look at. Since we are modifying brand and titles, we are going to want to include the parent SKU. So I'm just going to go over to my spreadsheet. That column is already named parent SKU, so I need to tell Flxpoint we're looking at parent SKU. And this isn't to modify the parent SKU or the variant SKU when we get to that part. This is what Flxpoint uses to identify those listings in your catalog to know which product to update these titles on. So like a lot of our other mapping templates, SKU is going to be the unique identifier used here. So that's what we're going to use to identify that product and upload those customizations to that. And by default, all the fields here are set to don't map. So again, we can have this file and say, I'm only updating brand and a few of the title fields on here. I can still leave all of these other fields. And as long as I don't map these, it's not going to look at that and it's not going to modify those fields. So I'm going to go here and fill out the brand column. And then we'll go down to the parent section since we updated some of the titles and UPCs. So I need to fill out the SKU field first for variant SKU, which is just titled SKU on our export. And then we'll grab UPC. So again, it's just mapping all the columns that we are wanting to do. And I see here I accidentally selected value. That's one thing to be aware of. You don't want to select value because that's going to overwrite all those fields with this value here. So if I did this, it was going to say SKU. Well, since it's SKU field, it would have just given us an error, but we want to make sure we're mapping the column and not a value for that. So we'll map UPC again here. And then we modified some of these titles. And we'll map that as well. So we'll go ahead and save this customization template. And now we'll go back to our product catalog and go to actions and see customizations here. Something to keep in mind here, just a little pro tip, if you have any item selected, when you go over to the actions button, you're going to see these import fields grayed out. It's just kind of a safety feature because it's not a selection process, it's an upload process from the file. So if you unselect those items, you'll be able to choose the import customization. So we'll go ahead and choose that. We'll use our template we just created, and then the file that we customized, this one right here, it's saved. And we will upload this in the Flxpoint. There's no rows to skip. This file does have headers, so we can leave these all as the default. File format as a CSV. If you're working with other formats, you can obviously go and select those, but Flxpoint gave us a CSV, so we're just going to re-upload that file right back into it. And we'll go ahead and click Run Product Customizations. This will take a few minutes to run, depending on the amount of items that you're updating, but you'll get a notification once it completes. Then once that does complete, we'll see these items update in Flxpoint. So we'll let that run. While we're waiting on that, feel free to post any comments or questions you have so far, or if you need any clarifications on this process up to this point. All right, no questions so far. So what we'll do while we're waiting on this customization to import on our product catalog, if we want to do this for channel listings, it's all going to be the same process here. So we could generate an export from our channel listings. If we go to actions, there's another customization import here. The only other difference between this and the product catalog customizations is you have to choose your channel for the products that you want to customize. Just like when you build products to your listings, you select which channel you're building them for. And here you do the same, and you would modify or select the channel that for the products that you're looking to modify and customize. So let's go ahead and see if these are done. Product customizations, nope, still waiting on that to complete. Okay, we had a good question come in. If we already have products, if we've already sent products to the channel without the customizations, will the customizations be automatically applied when the data is synced to the sales channel? Good question. No, it won't. Just like any changes of data from the supplier, if we are customizing data at the product level and say you've already have channel listings built for those items and they're already published to your website, you would need to select those channel listings and rebuild them. So that way those channel listings pull that new data in from the product catalog. And then if they're already listed, you would need to do a product overwrite on those items to get that new data up to your channel. If you don't have any channel listings created yet, and you're simply just customizing your product catalog before you get there, those customizations will be passed through to those items as you regularly build those items into the channel listings, because that data is already saved at the product level. So when it goes to build it, it's already there, and we'll build that channel listing, and then you would just publish those as normal. But again, if they do already exist and you already have channel listings and you're customizing them at the product catalog level, you would first need to rebuild your listings and then overwrite those to get the new data up to the website. That's a really good question. All right, our product customization has completed. We've customized these products on our upload. So if we go back here, Remember, I changed all the brands on these to Flxpoint, and that's updated for all of these items. And then we modified a UPC on this item right here. So all of our customizations were successful. We didn't wipe out any data that we didn't need to because we selectively chose which fields we were going to update in the customization mapping template. Another use case for this may be if you are working with some VAs and they're going through finding ASINs and things like that, you would then just use the export. And a lot of times what you can do, or what I suggest, is maybe you have, if you have multiple people working on this project, gathering new data, is run a Google spreadsheet. That way everyone can have access to it. Everyone can work on maybe a set list of items. And then maybe regularly you take an export from that Google sheet, and you already have the fields mapped or mapped out what fields you're customizing on that Google sheet, and upload that. That way you're always getting up-to-date data based on what you're working with your team, and getting things lined up exactly how you want on your website or your sales channels. And even ASINs, you would just map an ASIN column on the mapping template, and that would load all your ASINs into the product catalog. Or maybe you just want to do it at the channel level. But I would recommend, for things like that, if you're not going to be doing anything different on any of your channels, instead of having to upload that multiple times for each individual channel to get all your customizations up at the channel level, just do them at the product catalog. That way you have them all done at once in one spot. And then whenever you build new items from the product catalog to channel listings, all of your customizations are already there and ready to go for you as you publish new products. All right, this was a bit of a quick one today. I just wanted to go over some common use cases of product customizations and how they can be useful for you. If anyone has any other questions or want to see any more aspects of this, definitely let me know. Or we're at the point now, if there's any open questions about Flxpoint or any questions you have on using the system, definitely feel free to post them in the chat here. I'll give you all a few minutes to get those in. All right, we had a question come in respect to SKU limits on some of the plans. So if you have more channels and need to sort them, where should we pay attention to make sure you don't have more than your SKU limit? The SKU limit counts at any of the levels. So it's source inventory, product catalog, or channel listings. So let's say you have 100,000 items in your source inventory. You build all of those to your product catalog. That's still 100,000 one-to-one there. And then let's say you have 3 channels and you're listing all 100,000 to those 3 channels. So you technically have 300,000 channel listing SKUs. So in regards to the SKU limit, it's the highest of either of those 3 sections. It's not a total combined. It would be the highest in one of those individual sections. So you would need to just pay attention to how many are at each level and just make sure you're not going over the limit on one of those points in the dashboard there. And then someone was asking if you move all the products into the product or source inventory into the product catalog and do the sorting there. Yes, that ties into what I said before. That would be a good spot to kind of identify maybe brands that you don't want to import, or maybe certain categories you don't want to import to try to get under your SKU limit. But what you could definitely do is get them built to the product catalog, see how they all merge and combine there across your sources, and then go back to your sources and set up do not import workflow rules on any of the categories or brands that make sense that you don't want to sell to get under that limit. And then that way, once you set those rules, those products will be archived, and you can reach out to our support team and have the archived products deleted, and that would bring you under your SKU limit. Oh, had a good question come in on how to do a product rebuild. Yep. So say all these items, currently I don't have them built as channel listings, but what we could do is go over to the channel listings and select the items. And you would go over to your actions button, and there's a rebuild process here. I always recommend rebuilding the parents as well, because if you've modified the parent data, you want to rebuild that to make sure that gets brought in. And then you would just click rebuild listings. And what that's going to do is rebuild the items based on the data that's available in the product catalog. Oh, I think my screen share might have been frozen for that, but let me go through that one more time. So if we're looking in channel listings, you would select all the items for the channel that you want to rebuild them for. And then you would go to actions and rebuild. And then here's the rebuild parents option that I was discussing. It's always a good idea to select that one if you are modifying parent product data, such as brands or titles at that level. And then you would just click the rebuild listings button, and then that would update all of your channel listings that you selected with the new data from their products in the product catalog. Can I clarify again when it's better to modify the parent, or is it always just better to modify the variant? So it really depends on the data point, right? Because at the variant level, that's where we have the individual UPCs, ASINs, and then a variant title. And we also have option values and dimension values underneath the variants as well. So it just depends on what data point you're trying to modify, right? If we are modifying this variant data, you would need to include the variant SKU on the customization import, so we know the actual variant SKU we're updating. And then looking at the parent data, we do have a parent title as well. So this really could depend on how your sales channel works with variants. Some of them do use a parent title and then shows a variant title once you select an option. Some of them only run off the parent title. So it's kind of a decision on that specific field, how you want to do that, depending on the sales channel that you're using. But again, categories, there is a parent description as well. And then there's attribute fields, and then a brand would be data points that you're trying to modify on the parent level. And then another key on that as well is when you are doing the export and you're setting up the product customization or the export template here, it tells you next to the field if it's a parent or variant. Or if we go to add a new field here, the top section you can see here is variant data. So anything in this section that you're trying to customize would need the variant SKU. And then again, down here under the parent section, any of the fields that you're trying to modify would need the parent SKU. So again, it just depends on what field you are trying to modify to understand which upload you need to do to customize that. And like I just did in my example, there's no problem with modifying both, as long as you map the parent SKU and the variant SKU on the customization import. It will modify both the variant data and the parent product data at the same time for you. if there's an utilize import use, this is another question. If there's an utilize import use, doesn't it always overwrite the parent? Should we be careful to particular portions, parent versus variant, when utilize is added? That's a good question. And it really, there's not a great answer for that. It's really dependent on your use case. We do have utilize direct integrations though. So a lot of times you really probably wouldn't need to do a product customization because we can integrate directly with the specs basic, the specs flex, or the specs flex plus images plans that we had a previous webinar on. So if you haven't seen that, definitely go take a look at that one with Austin. He went over all of our utilize packages, but we could do a direct integration to utilize for most of our suppliers here. So that way at the source level, we're already importing in that expanded utilize data. So a lot of times you wouldn't even need to do a customization upload because you are getting that good utilize data from the start. But again, it goes back to the previous question. If you are trying to do a customization upload, it just really depends on the data point that you are trying to customize in regards to what field we need to upload on that customization upload. Hope that clears things up. That one might be better for a support call with one of our tech teams so we can look at your particular use case there and the needs of your data, just to get you a more solid answer within your own Flxpoint account. Here's another good question. Is there a way to control minimum quantity that's being sent to the channel? I don't know if any of you folks are familiar with our sister company, Inventory Source. They have a built-in control in their dashboard to set a minimum quantity, which essentially is, if we get an update from the supplier or your sources and we see a quantity below a threshold you set, we'll automatically set that listing on your channel to out of stock to kind of prevent any sales that happen that maybe your supplier is sold out by the time you got an update from them. There's a way to set that in Flxpoint here. That will be under our channel listings workflow. So if we go to our channels and go into the settings for the channel, there's a listing status workflow. Let me just delete these rules here so we can start fresh. But it would be using our if-then workflows. So we would add a rule, and let's say we want to set a minimum quantity of 5. So let's call it a minimum. Let's call it delist under 5. And what we'll say, if the variant quantity is less than, or let's do less than or equal to 5. But also, we want to set a listing status here. We want to say if the listing variant status equals listed. So if the listing variant's listed on your channel, and then we see the quantity go below 5, then we want to queue action delist. And what this will do, when we get an update from your sources and we see a total quantity for this variant go below 5, and it's already listed and published on your channel, we are going to delist the item. Or if you're using a channel that supports hiding the items, such as Shopify, where we can hide it from public view and not delete it from the system, you can choose to hide it here as well. So since I'm modifying this on my Shopify store, I'm going to just set this to hide. So let's update this and let's say hide under 5. Now, if we just leave it here, we're never going to relist an item or unhide it if we get more than 5 back in stock. So we need to set up somewhat of an inverse rule. So we're going to call this unhide over 5. And then we're essentially going to do the inverse. We're going to say if the quantity is greater than 5, because we set the previous rule if it's less than or equal to 5. So this one we're going to say if it's over 5. And we need to set another status here. If the listing status equals hidden, because we hid the item on our first rule, then we want a listing variant set to unhide. and then you would want to resync these rules. I'm not going to do it on my account right now, but you would run that resync, so that way these new rules apply to any products that are currently listed, and that way it'll automatically apply those changes and hide anything that's under your minimum quantity. And then the unhide in this order will relist it once it goes over a quantity 5, or whatever quantity you set for your filter. And then that's a simple way. Maybe there's certain brands that sell out more, so you can use all of our and rules and our functionality here to get really specific with this, so it's not just a global rule. If there's certain brands that sell out quicker than others, or it's a hot item, maybe you want to be a little bit more protective and try not to get any of those out of stock sales. But you can always add more rules to these, or more stipulations in the if then statements, to get where you want to do and really fine tune how it interacts with the products on your site. All right. That was the last question. If anyone else, I'll give you all a few more minutes here in case there's any other questions that pop up that you want to look over. Just type them in the QA section now. This is a good question. Does a webinar already exist about advanced rules that are most popular that we should know about, or hidden gems of logic? There's not one yet. I always try to toss those in on these as we do them. That is a really good question. I know we're working on a bit like that with our implementation teams here, to come up with a good set of kind of those hidden gems and good to knows, kind of like some pre-built recipes for things like this. So be on the lookout for that. It is something that we are working on for y'all. There's another question. For the shipping manager on my channel, I have to send the products there with the zip code. I have set a custom field for my integrations with the zip code. How do I make sure that information passes to the channel? That would really be dependent on the channel that you're using. If there is already, I'm assuming you're probably using a plugin, so they're probably going to be looking at a custom field or an attribute field on your channel. So you just want to make sure on your publish template, because usually fields like that happen on a publish or an overwrite, and they're not typically during a sync. But what you could do is look at your channels. So if I'm looking at my Shopify channel and I look at publish products, the mapping template for that, very likely you'll want to use a custom field or an attribute field. So here we have some custom fields that we can map on Shopify, and setting this up appropriately to match to what your plugin's likely looking for. And again, it's really probably going to depend more on the plugin. We can get the data there, but we just need to make sure we have it in a usable format that your plugin would use appropriately in that field. That would probably be a good one to spend a little bit of one-on-one time with our support team to kind of maybe look at your specific scenario. But again, if you map it over and you see that field and that data come through on the publish when you get the items over to your site, and it is the appropriate field that your plugin and your app that's using. Once the data is there, it'd really be on your plugin to use that. We don't, really interact with third-party plugins too much there, since it's kind of outside of our system. But we can always give you some tips and help out to get the data in a usable format for you there. All right. That seems to be it for the questions today. I really appreciate y'all joining today. As always, this video will be posted by the end of the week. Check our webinar page on Flxpoint to see the upcoming ones and register for those. Seeing a lot of familiar names in here that I'm seeing on the some of the past webinars. So I really appreciate y'all using this resource, and I hope it's been a big help for you guys. But yeah, we'll see y'all next week, and hope y'all have a good rest of your week. Thanks.